ready. Everybody's ready. We have dried apples. We're set to go. We will start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Welcome everybody as we slide in to our seats. It's December out, Dr. Brown, and and why not be in the school board meeting and go through 25 policies? And so we're going to do that in a few minutes.
25 now.
Oh, I was just expanding. I mean, why not just keep going? And I'm looking for modifications, Brad.
I'd like to offer, let's see, the agenda that you had in your Dropbox and the agenda that's printed here, we have a new B and C under the list of school district business. Two items from last evening's facilities meeting, so we've asked that those resolutions be placed on the agenda, and they're at item B and C under school district business. Also, I'd like to add a supplemental personnel report dated today, and I'd like to add that to the consent agenda.
Very good, and we can speak to B and C when the time comes.
When we get there.
Exactly, and without objection, we will make those additions. And there's no one signed up to speak this evening. If anyone wishes to speak, now's a great time to do that, because this is when the public gets a chance to do that. Not seeing anyone, so we'll keep moving. And student reps, and we do have a few student reps. And Adrian, here.
Yeah. All right. Well, the students at ACS had a great 5-day break.
It seemed like 5 weeks.
It's a pretty good idea. Just think about that.
I mean, it seems like an hour. And anyway, go ahead. You're good.
Anyway, and then tomorrow is actually our annual pasta dinner, where we have I think it's usually ziti and 3 different sauces, and we come down. All the family groups have a stand where they sell things, and there's a lot of fundraising money, and it's a lot of fun. And afterwards, there's a talent show, and I think the orchestra, band, and choir are all going to perform afterwards in a Culp auditorium, and it's going to be really great. And on Saturday at the First Baptist Church down to Dewitt Park, 3 ACS groups are volunteering at the Alternatives Gifts Fair, which is a place where you can spend money to get presents that are more of their donations. You get a card that says this person donated $5 your name to like some place in this what they bought like some like nails for a construction site, and the Alcatraz family group is going to be there. The Katrina Lee family group is going to be there, and some students who work with the youth farm are also going to be there. And I think it would come down. It's going to be really great, and it's a great way to get non-consumer products for holidays.
Very good, thanks. And Connor in Ithaca High School and Max.
Yep.
Very good, Max. Go ahead.
Well, we had students experienced a relaxing 5-day break last week for Thanksgiving vacation. School gave students the time to spend with family and celebrate what they're thankful for, and came back Monday ready to learn. And in girls swimming news, we had Ayla Bonnewell won the diving state championship, which is very good for our girls swim team. And the student-directed one acts will be this Thursday and Friday. We have one showing Thursday at 4:30 and 2 Friday, both at 4:30 and 7:30. Student-directed and student-led, which should be a wonderful theatrical experience.
Okay, so Seneca Falls, it happened. We went with ICSD Transportation, towing us down Seneca County, and went to the Women's Rights Museum. It was an extraordinarily informative trip and fun. Saw Elizabeth Cady Stanton's house. And, get this, the National Park Service, we're dealing with the federal government here, had a decoy woman. We thought she was just participating in these, events with us, learning style. He goes, all right, we're going to do a new type of learning. There's this woman visiting. All right. And then when the tour and festivities concluded, she was like, nah, I'm a supervisor from, the federal government, and you are our guinea pigs to test out this new audience responsive discussion based type of learning, and you guys blew me out of the water. And so that was nice. We kind of benefited from the federal government, which sometimes doesn't always happen.
It was polite.
Yeah.
Editorial comment by Conoco.
Okay.
It's written on the board.
The fall dance was held on November 22nd, as I spoke about last meeting. It was a concentrated crowd, so we had a nice, appropriate venue. Which was activities building, but we usually don't have dances there. But we thought for a concentrated crowd, let's have a concentrated venue. So it was very appropriate and again fun, well staffed, nice music, smiles. Wonderful. Okay, cross country. Why are we still talking about it? Because the successes keep happening. Excellent. Okay, so runners ran on Saturday in sub-freezing, 25 degrees temperatures, and it was snowing, and they were there in their uniforms, track shorts. Pretty impressive, I would say. Result of that, Dan Dracup goes to nationals, the highest in Oregon. So we're extraordinarily proud of him, competing amongst the nation's best athletes over on the West Coast.
Wow.
And yes, that concludes the report for this evening.
Great. Thanks, Ithaca. Any board responses? Anyone? Chris, go ahead.
So what's a concentrated crowd?
Well, I was being politically correct. Small.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. Anyone else?
Connor.
Pat, anything? Just tag on events coming up. Tis the season. Over the next few weeks, choir. It's the Winter Choir Concert, band, orchestra. There's plays at DeWitt and Boynton, Moulin at Boynton, and Aladdin at DeWitt. This is all coming up for board members. Obviously, can slide in and see tremendous talent going on throughout the district, and great concerts at Cult over the next few weeks. So I certainly encourage everyone to, if it's in your time schedule, go ahead and check into that. And we do get emails from the Finance Boosters group, so they have a listing of events. You can certainly check that out. We'll move on. Consent agenda.
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second.
Second by Pat. Fairly short. Any questions? Go ahead, Sean.
Quick conversation about the Head Start grant application. Someone just tell me a little more about it. We're hoping to do. Who was involved in it?
Dr. Landau? This grant is something that we submit on a yearly basis, I think, to just renew our annual grant with Head Start. So it's something that we do through Tompkins County, or Tompkins
Community Action.
Community Action. And we work closely with them in the implementation of it. But it's fairly standard. We use it to fund we have 5 of the special education classes for pre-K, but every single other pre-K class that we have has Head Start students in it. In the past, I think sometimes we just had some of the classes were Head Start, but we decided to have Head Start students throughout the entire program, which makes sense for the way we run it. And they have some different regulations and standards than we do kind of in the typical K to 12 realm, so we work to implement those. But we do kind of, we go, as we talked about last budget season, we go above and beyond in many instances what a typical Head Start class does in ICSD. So the Head Start grant, I like to now point out to people, only gets us part of the way there for funding, and ICSD through our general fund contributes quite a bit to operate our pre-K program. So this is just a portion of the funding for pre-K.
Thanks, Matt. Anything else? If not, move seconded. All in favor? That's everyone. And Dr. Brown, I think we're ready.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Andrew. On this beautiful day, it is my opportunity to be honored to be here. And if I may do so, I wish to highlight three things that continue to give me an appreciation for what we do here in our community. Starting with what we had happen today at 5:30 in Call, the commendation ceremony. We just recognized some of the best and brightest minds in the country. Young people who are achieving at unprecedented levels of success. National Merit Scholarship finalists. Young people who are performing for state and national events because of what they're doing with music. Athletes who are winning state championships. As a person who's been woken up for the last 3 years by Ella Bonneville diving at 5 a.m., I can tell you there's a lot of work and effort and dedication that goes into what our young people are achieving. And I think we as adults need to just stop and admire them and learn from them. We talk a lot about leading with love, which leads to the second piece. Myself and Mr. Trumbull had an opportunity to meet with some inspiring young people yesterday morning. As we came into the high school and we heard from some parents and some other folks about some chatter on Facebook about the potential for an unsettling protest happening. So, as a superintendent and high school principal, we want to kind of get to know what that protest may be about and what it will look like as we are tasked with making sure everyone is safe. And what we learned is that young people were still grappling with the emotions associated with the Ferguson case, like we all are, including the superintendent, as we said to them. And so we engaged, like we do every day with young people, in a conversation about their feelings and what they wanted to have accomplished through what was being called in some circles a protest. Well, what I'd heard early yesterday morning was shutting down Cayuga Street. And that wasn't the intent of our young people at all. In which we said to them very clearly, we will support you in whatever you wish to do. If you're looking to be a part of shutting down Cayuga Street, we will just make sure everyone's safe. If you, as some of them said, if you are looking to organize and provide a national model for how to lead with love and to engage in this conversation in a way where we can really go after institutional racism and all the things that our community and country are grappling with, we're here to support you with that too. And what happened was one of the best conversations I've had with young people since I've been here. And that conversation continued this afternoon as we sat through a conversation with other folks about what they're hoping to organize in the near future. If they do what they're thinking about doing right now with our support, and again, we're here to support them with whatever they wish to do, they will serve as a national model for how to lead with love and affect social change. And I'm excited about it. Again, appreciation for the young people that we have a chance to interact with every day. And then finally, the last time we were together, I was fortunate. I talked about an opportunity I was going to have to go to D.C. I was invited to be with the president and his cabinet for a day because of what our young people in our community are doing. We are a future-ready district. The initiative that the president launched on November the 18th, I believe it was, is a Connect Ed Future Ready initiative. And as he said to me, for the next 2 years, this is one thing that no one has to vote on. And it's a passion of mine. I want our country to be connected. And, that was what he said. He said a lot that day. That was one of the first things he said. I took some things from that. I want to share some things that were takeaways for me from that event. I was one of 100 superintendents that was invited. I was also asked to speak after the president, so I was able to speak, and that was streamed online through the White House website. So it was a chance for us to share the work that we're doing, talk about how we're approaching leading in this way to have our young people future ready. But some things I took from it, that conversation with not only the president and his cabinet, but the other superintendents in the room, was some of the best thinkers in the world, really, was that we as a country are being outpaced by a lot of other countries when it comes to how young people are connected, and then once connected, how we are working to facilitate the conversations in a connected digital world. We just are. There are countries who are doing one-to-one initiatives, who have done one-to-one initiatives, but now we're really talking about how that can transform how they do business. We're just getting to that conversation. And something else I took from it is that all the districts are struggling with the same things. The conversations we have, the infrastructure needs we have, things people are frustrated with on occasion. Everyone's struggling with it, whether you're Fulton County with 100,000, 120,000 students, Baltimore County with 115,000, or Ithaca with 6,000. We're all having the same conversations about how to be future ready and provide the infrastructure, professional development, and the thinking to shift in this way. And finally, I took from that conversation and that day at the White House was that the conversation about devices, the Chromebook versus an iPad, a MacBook Air versus a Dell laptop, is such a micro conversation. And I think what we've been leading a conversation about how the tools and being connected digitally is going to shift how we collaborate, problem solve, and create, and how it going to have impacts on our classrooms and physical environments, etc. But still, people every day, I hear them, I get the emails, you probably get them too, people want to go back to the device. And that micro conversation, and having a conversation with John D.C. in LA, and Mark Edwards in North Carolina, who've gone through this like we're going through this, they keep reminding me that the device conversation is a micro conversation. It's important to have it, but let's not spend most of our time talking about the iPad versus the Chromebook. Let's talk about how we're going to get young people to collaborate and think digitally and compete in this global economy in the 21st century. So those are some key takeaways. Again, as someone who grew up not far from the White House and never having the opportunity to go in because we couldn't afford parking, and to have a conversation with my parents over at Thanksgiving dinner about having a personal tour of the White House by some pretty important people was fun. To have them know about our work and know our names was pretty scary at times. To go through security 3 different times to get through to the White House was scary. But the experience itself personally had an impact on me and will have for the rest of my life. But I'm here to tell you in the community, I'm also fired up now because I believe in public education. I know we have much more work to do. And there's a sense of urgency in me that has always existed, but it probably has been rekindled since my trip to D.C. Thanks for the additional time to speak on the superintendent.
It's your time, Dr. Brown. And I kind of thought you were pretty fired up already, but so glad that it was such a good trip. And we know it was a bit of an ordeal. You did, and I would have to commend you, you did stay here for our meeting that night, and then basically drove all night to get to D.C. to be there by 7 a.m. I believe that's when you had to, well, you have to work through security, and so we appreciate the effort that you made to be here to do our business, but also to represent the district, obviously at the national level, and we are always proud of our staff and the students of what they accomplish. But on that day, you represented all of us, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else, Dr. Brown? We good?
That's it for me.
We do have a list of school district business, and so we're going to get to that right now. And those of you students that have signed up for your government class today, there's more on the agenda than there are some nights, but you're just lucky, guys. So there may be an opportunity at some point to get a signature from someone up here.
And sneak away.
And because I'm sure you have homework, etc. But we appreciate you being here tonight. And but first and foremost, and somebody's going to Paris, and it's not me. And I wonder if Mr. Trumbull's going this time, but he's probably not going to get to go. But
I don't believe so.
Yeah, okay.
We've Adam Bowman here to speak to it. So
exactly, and we do know that Mr. Powers used to take the opportunity to go on trips because well earned and a great chaperone. But we're going to hear about a Paris trip. First off.
Okay. So the Paris trip.
No, please.
Okay, so good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I'll be brief. The Paris trip has been going on since 1999. Every other year I've organized a group of students that have taken the trip to Paris, and this year is not an exception. We have 25 students that have signed up and that will be going. We will be going during the break between March 28th until April 5th, so that is during the spring break vacation. The trip centers itself in Paris, and then we work from Paris, and we take 2 small excursions. We take one to Versailles, and then we also take one, this year we're going to be going to Giverny, and so then of course you know that is the home and gardens of Monet. And then we will also be going to Amboise. And Amboise, there we will be viewing, it was where Leonardo da Vinci spent his last 6 years. And so therefore, they've turned it into a museum devoted to his scientific experiments and achievements. And so therefore, from those 2 trips, we're not only able to explore the arts, but we're also going to be able to explore the science achievements by an incredible human being. And then when we're in Paris, we will of course be viewing all of the important historical sites that have created the French culture and have also influenced in every culture that I could think of. And those being, for example, the Louvre, we'll be going the Tour Eiffel, Champs-Élysées, Arc de Triomphe, and the Musée Picasso, the museum devoted to Picasso. And so therefore you not only have a French influence, but you have also Spanish influence. You have Rodin, considered to be one of the most important sculptors of the 20th century, and if you've ever been to Philadelphia, then you know that you've seen some of those also there. So students that have done that will actually be able to see some of the original pieces that he created. And then besides those major museums, we'll be going to the Conciergerie, where you have all of the information dealing with the beheadings of all of the political prisoners that represent liberation movements that inspired Americans and many other cultures. And so during this time, my students are also going to be preparing for that. We're meeting every month to create a PowerPoint that they will present to their fellow students who are going, and then they are also going to present that on the spot at one of these monuments, so that once again it becomes real for them. We're also going to be, I'm going to be asking them, each group of 2 to 3 students, to create a blog in which, I don't know if I'm going to do a blog, but it's going to be a one-page reflection about what we saw that particular day, and then what maybe impacted them that they saw. And then the third thing is I'm going to do an impromptu oral examination where I catch them in a cafe or I catch them in a boutique, and I'm going to evaluate how well they deal with that process. So those are all educational goals that I think are extremely important, and I think also will re-emphasize the idea of becoming a global citizen, being able to talk about high cultural events, also be able to deal with the individual ordinary lives that one has, and then also just be able to appreciate a different culture. So finally, in regards to how am I helping my students to pay for some of the costs, because it is an expensive visit. Right now we have amassed about $800 in donations, and I'm hoping to also have, before we leave, an additional $200 to $300 that would go into that fund. We are also, I know we can't sell chocolate during the day, but we're going to be able to sell chocolates outside of the classroom and outside of the school. And then also we're going to be selling crêpes after school, and we're going to make sure that they're nutritional. and as that possibility, my students have also been working during the summer to help offset some of the costs. And so all of those means, I believe, are definitely not necessarily as much as we would all like, but I do believe that they're a very serious and effort towards helping some of the students help pay for some of the costs. I definitely believe this is one of the a very important aspect of becoming a global citizen, and I also believe it's a very important aspect for any student who's a serious learner of language. They have to have this type of one-on-one experience in a Francophone country in order to increase their capacity to speak, understand, and understand also a Francophone culture.
Tremendous. Questions from the group? Go ahead, Elder. Elder first, then Jay.
Go ahead, Jay. Who replaced Jared to go?
Actually, at the moment, Jared believes he is able to go.
He is on the list, so right. So that's.
He was. The board approved him in Union Springs to go. That's
Okay.
And then it's Harlan Gray is going with me.
Sure. Not sure that's an issue, I guess, but that's right. His name was on the list, so that there's an assumption that he would be, Jared would be, Mr. Powers would be replaced by one of our.
recommendation.
Right. No, it's follow up, Jay, or Elder, go ahead.
So thank you for pointing out that we have been really consistent here that although we will never try to exclude anyone from the trip, we are cognizant of the fact that we live in a community so fortunate that some of our students can go with their parents on such a trip for 4 weeks during the summer, just because we're graced by that. But we're always really interested in finding out specifics. And I don't know if you came prepared to discuss it, so I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if not now, at some point, I'm always consistently interested in the number of diverse children, by class or race, whatever, makes sense given the cohort of kids you want to take who are going to be given this opportunity because of the fundraising.
So I could offer those numbers. Are you looking at ethnic, you're looking at economic situations? Is that the type of information? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Whatever
what you're
makes
seeking.
sense. You know the kids. There could be African American kids who would fund 8 trips. I'm not even, how do I know, right? But from a class and ethnicities perspective, we know there are kids who might be shut out of these opportunities. And if you're working hard to raise some money to help them, we collectively would just want to know how many kids are benefiting from that effort.
Maybe that's something we can.
Those are numbers that can be provided. Not tonight, but
Yeah, and I also think we need to go broader for all of our trips, school-wide, so that frankly when folks like Madam Bowman are putting together the trips and giving up those breaks, and then she can focus her efforts there as others pick up the ball and make sure.
We've been saying that. I think you guys have been doing it.
Yeah,
We just want to know.
But I also want to make sure that we're clear that her efforts there to make sure it's a strong trip for everybody, and we all raise our level of our game to make sure that we have full participation of all students that want to go. So I know for me, I want to do a better job at doing that as well.
And certainly as a student, as far as self-selecting out of a trip, it would, Dr. Brown, the impromptu oral examinations is one thing that would be, that's pretty, that's good. That would be hard.
They're already in Paris when she starts, so it's too late.
I know. It's just the mere specter of impromptu oral examinations. It's like, oh my God. Anyway, so but it sounds like a tremendous trip that you have been doing for many years now, and it's just and it's great to that you continue to sponsor and make it happen. And there's much work that goes into these trips, and we certainly realize that. But we have always asked. About the makeup and whether the trips are at least available. That kids like me coming through did not automatically self-select out. I made a joke about the oral examinations, but right, there's a lot of kids that would probably just, I'm never going to be able to do that, or that's, I'm not going to. That's not something that I'm going to be able to participate in. They just trying to get the idea that you may certainly be able to do that. There are ways that you can be able to afford that if you can.
Right, we're starting to have different conversations within many of our clubs and organizations about service learning, taking care of our own internal community, and certainly to leverage that kind of energy as well.
Go ahead, John. And then
Just, did any kids have to be turned away because you filled up?
No.
Is that, and just from my own background, normally are you able to take everybody that wants to go?
Anybody that's so far showed an interest, we've tried to make that happen.
So you haven't had you haven't had more people wanting to go than you had spots?
No.
Good. Thanks.
Sean.
So this is not specific to this trip, and I want to echo what Rob said. The work and describing the trip, it seems like an amazing experience, and I know that when you're on the ground that, you're in Paris, but it's 24 hours on the clock, and it's a hardship. I understand that for the chaperones that go. And so, but also, continually gives us an opportunity to ask this question. So the information that Elder's looking for, I'll be very specific. I'm not interested in ethnic or racial breakdown. I'm simply interested in the number of students who have free and reduced lunch, who have the opportunity, or some economic breakdown. Because in terms of self-selection, if you offer me a trip to go to Paris, but I see a trip that costs me $3,700, I'm self-selecting out immediately, just because I know my family can't afford it, right? And so what I'm trying to figure out, at some point in time, I'd like to have a conversation as a board that when these trips take place, that we let folks, and maybe this is already done, right? But we let folks know well in advance that don't let the cost stop you from applying. Apply and let's figure out the cost afterwards. And maybe there's a fund that we talk about doing that we help, provide scholarships based on students who have, severe economic need, whatever the case may be. But these experiences are phenomenal, and I would hate that some of our students aren't able to go strictly because of economics, especially at a public school where we're making these opportunities available. So we've been having this dialogue for 2 or 3 years now. At some point in time, I'd like to stop having the dialogue and actually put something in place where we're, and again, it's not about this trip, but where we're actually being much more proactive.
And we feel the same way. I think just in the transition of Jason and I, just in the last month, we're sort of playing catch up a little bit with what we do. But we had almost the exact same conversation that you just said between the two of us about an hour and a half ago. That we'd like to have just a more proactive conversation about all the trips as well. Because thinking about tonight, I was probably one of those self-select out in high school as well. but then when I was in college and was under some scholarships and whatnot, I was told, hey, you could go on this trip for free. And so that changed a lot of things for me, and I'm sure that would be the same. So obviously it's a budget initiative as well, so that it has those implications if we wanted to go that route. But I think it's a conversation worth having too. We just need to play catch up on it a little bit.
So I don't want to, but is there a way in which we can find a way to put this back on an agenda so we don't lose sight of it at some point in time, right? Not to, because I want to delink this trip from the larger issue.
Right. Some committee.
It could start some
Life-changing experience.
Some audit committee, maybe, or
Lots.
But once again, Sean said it better than I did, and I certainly agree wholeheartedly. And Danielle, we'll just make a note to get it on the agenda.
We should assign it to a committee.
It could be like a sort of a curriculum and a finance. It seems like almost kind of a joint thing because the financial implications are interesting.
Very.
Yeah, and but then there's So I think both of those would be the way to do it.
That's going to go. Finance and curriculum.
That's fine.
Sounds fine. All right. Very good.
I'll move the approval of the trip to Paris as presented.
Second by Judy Max. All in favor? Well, any other questions now that it's moved? Seconded? Anything else? All in favor? That's certainly everyone. Tremendous job. Good luck on the trip.
Okay, thank you.
Enjoy it.
Thank you. I expect the postcard from here.
Sending a non-district employee?
Self-parents.
Okay, so anyway, so
CPR.
but we will move on, and thank you all. And item B is a resolution to approve license agreement with the Enfield Community Council. And Brad, you want to go ahead and speak?
I will move it, and if seconded, would like to speak to it.
Second.
Second by Pat.
We've been working on this for a while. The Enfield Community Council would like to erect a building on a portion of the school district's land at Enfield for a community center. It would be a benefit to our students, these after-school programs, before-school programs, summer programs. So it would be a benefit to our students. What we're being asked to do here tonight is approve an agreement to allow them to continue forward with their planning so they can go on the land, do the testing they need to do and so forth for construction. It would be our intention to bring a resolution to the voters in May to approve a long-term lease for the same piece of land so they could then go ahead and erect the building. This is allowing them to do the studies they need to do the planning, and move ahead in those regards. As I say, we've been working with them. I know the folks at Enfield School are anxious to have this adjacent to them, and right across the parking lot. So kind of a shared setup for it. So certainly the finance committee is anxious to have you approve this and move ahead.
Did you mention the vote in May? I missed
You
that.
did.
Yep,
Yeah.
I did. Yep, it'll be. No, it's okay.
There is much room at Enfield. It's not a question of constricting any outside
Yeah,
area.
we own
at
a little
Enfield.
more than 15-acre site there. This is a 4-acre piece.
If anything, we wouldn't have to mow about 2 acres, perhaps.
Exactly.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah, we're mowing about half of this right now.
Right. So and certainly the Enfield community through the town's supervisor.
But it's not a town activity. This is
Right.
the Enfield Community Center.
Right, through the auspices of the Enfield Community Council that does run through its entity, does run the after-school program, the summer day camp, and then a variety of programming. In the past, used to team up with Cooperative Extension to run some after-school programs for a variety of youth in the rural community. They are in dire need of a new.
This puts them right next to the school, means they can use the playground space, that sort of thing. So it's a great combination, as I discussed last night and mentioned. It's similar to our relationship with GIAC, the two programs, while independently, the PJM and GIAC obviously independently operated, they're side by side, serve the same group of children. It's a great relationship.
Did they take over the insurance liability of that for Green?
Yes.
Sure. Okay.
Yep. Well, yeah. In fact, the license agreement itself is actually in your Dropbox.
Yeah.
The insurance is the longest section.
Oh, it's number 3. I see it. Yeah.
This is just a license to continue their investigation.
That's correct. At this point, just through June 30th of 2015.
And
Referendum in May.
so if we've never had a referendum about the pool lease.
It's not a long-term lease. We can lease up to 10 years without voter approval. If you want to do a long-term lease, you have to have
Longer
voter
than 10
approval.
then is the?
Yeah.
And you anticipate the lease in the end to be longer than 10?
We haven't finalized it, but 30, 35 years.
They had to build.
They're going to build and
Is it a building or a pavilion?
it's a building. It's a building.
Sewer, all that.
They're going to, yeah.
Community center.
Well, septic.
They're going to a small kitchen area, things, the basics, not anything really fancy. Enfield will have a heavy lift to raise the funds or go through the various.
This is their biggest challenge, is
Yeah.
the fundraising here.
We would like to not delay that process. We will have an education function on our end to explain what this referendum is in May. Why is it on the ballot, and why should the people and the rest of the ICSD go ahead and approve it. Certainly, we can explain that as we go through the budget process.
And I assume that the lease would be with the town of Enfield.
No, it's going to be with as the
PCC.
resolution says, it'll be with the Enfield Community Council.
Right.
And they are, they're not.
501c3.
They are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Jay, I don't know the ins and outs of why they're doing it this way in Enfield. They're choosing not to do it through the minor civil division. They're doing it through a not-for-profit.
And by lawyers?
Our
Are they
lawyers
good?
drafted all of this.
Right.
But they're okay to do it to the 501(c)(3)
Yeah, they drafted it.
instead of the, well, this is a license, this isn't the long-term.
Well, they'll have
30.
Jay, we could do it to a private enterprise if we wanted to as well.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with whether public
Yeah,
or private,
exactly.
not-for-profit.
I'd rather, anyway, I think I'd rather be doing, I'd be just to the town of Enfield than to some subset.
But then you're getting into the politics of Enfield, which
I don't want to do that. But okay, I got it. I'm in favor.
I'd love to be doing it to a AAA credit, but we're not. So, I don't think we're taking a huge risk.
Yeah, no.
Full disclosure, I was a member of the ECC in my prior board services.
Long before this.
Before the ICSD. I was president of the Enfield Community Council. I'm pretty familiar with what they face out there. Very familiar with the building that they have been using, which made me cringe every time I was in it. But, just...
So it's not shady enough to be saying.
It would be great to have, a clean, mold-free space for young people to use and for the community to use. It would be great. But Enfield is going to have to make it happen, and others who wish to contribute to Mexico.
I was at the PTA meeting last night, and one of the things they were discussing was the plan for a safe evacuation if that became necessary. And they would, while the buses were getting out there, they would begin walking down to the fire station. And if you're familiar, you know that's a trek. This building would serve as an evacuation site also, which would be
for the school.
Yeah,
Right.
which is
The fire station is
Yeah.
quite a ways away from
Yeah.
the school. Right.
That's good.
Okay.
no, you can go right down. It's right on the creek. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else regarding this item? With no further questions, all in favor. Elbert did step out, but I do believe we have everyone, minus Elbert, who is absent at this point. And number C, Brad, what is?
I'll move item C, resolution to approve building conditions survey proposal as presented.
Second.
Sean?
Sean, you want to speak to it?
Sure. As part of New York State's regulations, every 5 years, school districts are required to conduct a building condition survey. Our last building condition survey was in 2010, which means that we're up by the end of 2015 for a new building condition survey. We've gone through, you can find the proposal that is in the Dropbox. We asked Hunt engineers to construct 3 different scenarios with some possible addendums that we could consider in doing this building condition survey. In other words, how are we taking a look at the infrastructure of the school district, some of its innards, etc. The facilities committee met yesterday and approved option B, which would be the step above the bare minimum, which would also include working with our maintenance staff, providing them with detailed analysis, and, if I'm not mistaken, a 3-pronged approach to maintenance about what needs to be taken care of. We have, at this point in time, according to that proposal, decided that we were not going to follow up with any of the other items that were listed. We could add them at some point in time should we choose, but for our current needs and with the advice of Paul Alexander, with Amanda Verba, and with the facilities committee, decided that option B would take care of everything that we need. Also feel compelled to mention that the 8 cents per square foot is well under the New York State reimbursement rate of 26 cents a square foot. Which means that the 86,000 you see here, 58% of that is state aidable, which will come back to us. So that's what you have before you. You can take a look at the proposal and see the various resolutions or the various options and addendums that we won't do. Miss anything, Brad?
No, I think that's right.
Rob?
And I guess the only point is that the reason that we did not go to the other options and option C is that we are engaged in the EPC, the Energy Performance Contract. So we're addressing our main priorities, and one of the option C helps you prioritize. Well, geez, we kind of done that, so it's going to be useful perhaps in 5 years to do that piece again. But at this point, we've taken multiple steps throughout the years to address the needs of the district.
And I should add that the 2010 building condition survey was also a substantial improvement from our 2005 building condition survey, in that we also had a queue control added, a program that Paul and his folks can use for maintenance requests. because they did such an extensive job in 2010 is precisely the reason why they don't have to do as significant a job in 2015 to charge us less money as well. So we're gaining a little bit from work that we've done previously, and as Brad probably said, thank you for that as well, that some things we decided not to do because we're expecting them to be taken care of under the EPC, the energy performance contract. Other things we decided not to do because we're not sure how the energy performance contract would change whatever was coming our way. So until we get some of that worked out, we're doing what we think would satisfy our needs and still, be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers.
And we pretty much know the bathrooms at the high school need to be fixed.
I think we know those are on the list. Yes.
Got it. Been there. Got it. Understood. But anything else?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Judy.
It says here that you need a person to look at the theater, but I don't see any.
That's an option.
That's
and
an option.
And we're choosing not to take
do that. Are
So
you choosing to do
none of we're choosing to do none of those that you see there. Those are just possibilities that could be folded into the
Well, I
building
was just
conditions.
looking at the project team, and I saw that there's an engineer. And
That was their proposal is extensive. We're only accepting option B.
Okay, so that doesn't include gyms either?
No.
Well, the
Okay.
gym, depends on what you mean, Judy. I mean, the gyms are part of it, but we're not getting a specific. Are you looking at something that would have what item are you looking at?
I was just looking at the theater one and wondering why we weren't doing the gym one.
We are doing.
Well, all 1 million square feet are going to be evaluated.
Okay.
They have to be.
They have to be. That's part of the base work. What we're not doing is hiring a special theater program person, which they've offered to do, but we've chosen not to do that.
Right.
Same with food service. We're not. When we say we're only picking option B, we mean we're only picking option B, and everything below it we're not picking.
So, Judy, with both those real quick, so the theater, for
else.
example, what we've been told is that oftentimes those theater specialists recommend lighting changes. We're probably going to be doing that anyway with the EPC, so there's no need for to do that.
Similar with the food
Similar
service.
with the food service. We're already doing food service work with the kitchens with the energy performance contract, so there's no need.
See, what I didn't read where it said option C, that these things came under it.
That's right.
I thought they paid
We
for
stopped,
everything.
and so we're stopping at the end of B. And really everything after B we could pick. I mean, you could decide to,
a la carte.
a la carte. You could pick the thermal scanning
And there's
if you wanted to not do any of the others. But we've
Okay.
chosen at this point, because of the EPC, which is doing a number of these, not to. And I think also some of the things, as you mentioned, the option C. I mean, if we could change some of the controls anyway to be evaluating what's there now, and while somebody else is planning on changing them within 6 months, it seems like a duplication and a bit of a waste.
And Judy Max, you can see on those various options, there's a dollar amount. That's what it would cost to run those.
I mean, if you wanted to do
above and beyond the dollar amount.
as Sean called it, it's a la carte. I mean, if you wanted to do the thermal scanning, they're offering to do it for $21,000 if you wanted to do it. We think the EPC is actually doing something similar. So we're not choosing at this time. 5 years from now,
Right.
you might think, well, you might think it wasn't as complete as you'd hoped, and maybe you want to do it, or energy is at a point where it's so expensive that it's worth spending that money to try to find every little spot. Right now, I mean, they're doing a number of things as part of the EPC in just what you would be finding in a thermal scan as far as closing up any air penetrations into the buildings, 12 of them.
Future boards, Brad, in 5 years can decide.
We can figure that out.
So at this point,
Exactly. We'll give them 1 million square feet and let them take care of it.
Exactly. We're not tying the hands of any future boards on any action.
That's right.
Exactly. Anything else? Are we good? It's been moved second, right? Yes. Second by Sean. All in favor? That's everyone. And I'll do this back. So, and I'm Dr. Brown. I'm not sure.
It's me.
Oh, okay. Sean, we're trademarking the district logo.
So
I assumed it was a Dr. Brown thing, but Sean, go ahead.
Well, Dr. Brown may like this afterwards.
Yeah.
So we had a couple conversations in a couple of different committees. One, a conversation in finance, another conversation in policy. that if you travel around some of the local stores, you will see Ithaca High School and Ithaca City School District gear being sold.
What's up with
And
that?
so we're looking into it. So we were asked the policy committee to consider a possible district logo policy. And in doing some research, what I came across is that most of the other districts who have logo policies have taken the step to trademark their logos. And in fact, a significant number of New York State public schools have taken the step to trademark their logo. So the question of the policy committee was, before we even entertain any sort of policy around this, is it something that we want to consider doing? What may be the economic benefits, the economic costs, etc. But it just seemed to be that that was not a conversation for the policy committee, that was a conversation for the board. And so we're just putting it out there. We don't have much more information beyond that. I can send a couple of sample policies and examples, put it in the Dropbox if folks find that useful. They're already in the policy committee Dropbox, but I can put them in the full board Dropbox as well. But that was the conversation. Did I miss anything, Pat or Judy?
No, that was it. That's good.
Go ahead.
And we saw some school districts in the western part of the state had gone ahead, trademarked their logo, their name, that sort of thing. So if somebody puts it on gear, in theory, it's got to show that it's trademarked in there.
Just background information before we go to Jay. Does it increase the cost of the apparel for booster groups, or?
No, I mean, presumably we allow booster groups to use the trademarks at no charge. I mean, the question that was brought to us was, is the school district getting paid anything?
Right. Target's selling it.
Because Target's selling stuff that says Ithaca Little Red.
I've seen it at Wegmans.
And we've been asked, are we getting anything? The answer is no. I suspect we will never get anything. They'll just stop selling it, would be my guess. But I don't know. In theory, you could be licensing it.
So Jay, then come.
To that point that you're speaking about, Brett, I'm trying to think why even do it.
Oh, no, we don't have to.
That's the discussion.
So, and so why do you think other school districts have done it? I mean, if you're doing it to make money, that's not a winning argument for me, because I don't think you're going to make enough money to ever, like you gave a good example, probably someone would stop selling them because it's chump change to everybody. And
I suspect that's,
I
Jay,
don't see why do it.
I think that's exactly it. I think people were I suspect districts were being pressed as to why their name, their logo is being sold by someone.
And they want to stop it.
Another thing we need to be careful about, phony websites, phony Facebook pages,
Right.
Twitter accounts. Folks could take our logo and mimic us
Yeah.
without our knowing.
So my quick response is the reason why you do it, Jay, is simply for cease and desist.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for anything else, right? But you then have a much more legal rationale for cease and desist. You can actually try to enforce it as opposed to now, what do you say? Please don't use our logo?
We can't.
But do we have any instances of our logo being used in a way that we don't like?
We do.
We do.
We do.
A couple of Facebook pages out there.
Sometimes on posters, the logo gets put without
Yeah.
district approval or sponsorship. It's not.
That's yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah, and someone might. Okay, that's bad.
Connor, go ahead.
Right. Well, and I'm sorry, Connor, before we go. And that's part of the reason why it came to us as well, was that there have been folks creating posters with district logo without approval. Or even known to the district, and we would find them out afterwards. So that's partly how we got to start looking at this as well.
As a citation, we at Sports Boosters has noticed about a half a dozen stores selling things, little red dubbed, and I didn't think it was easily attainable to change our logo, but I can definitely attest to why we might want to do that, and why it would be beneficial if somebody can go out and buy a IHS, apparel cheaper at a half a dozen stores in this area. It's kind of taking away from our booster club, and we do have a school store at lunch also, run directly by high school personnel.
So one possibility would be just to do a little more research and look into it further. If it's worth looking into, we didn't want to. If the reaction was this is foolish, just not even looking at it, then that's that. But if it's look, there may be something there. It's worth trying to figure out what it would cost us to do this. Is it even worth the expense, or what we may be able to gain from it? I mean, I think that was the idea of the committee. If I could.
If I could just add, it was first brought to my attention by a sports booster who was saying, this is I'm sure this is cutting into our sales, and is the district getting anything from the stores? But the policies that Sean found were really dealing more with the actual logo and how it was used, and how, you know, you need the district's permission and it can't be changed or altered. And I think aside from the sales of clothing, I think it brought up a point that I was previously unaware of about unauthorized use of the district logo for other activities, events, websites, whatever, and that, in my opinion, would be worth looking into.
Very good. So we're going to...
So we'll put it on the policy committee meeting, and we'll try to do a little more research and come back to the board and see if what comes back to us, if that works for us.
Has it been run by lawyers yet? I suppose that'd be the next step, wouldn't it?
Well, Bonsheng and King has already drawn up documents for other districts, so it wouldn't
So you did
take.
ask for their form.
It wouldn't take. I don't think it would take them long.
Very good.
Bring in the lawyers.
We're not the first ones to ask the question.
Right.
No.
So very good. It sounds like policy has another policy to.
So right, there are a number of policies on the agenda today. Let me speak to them briefly, and then offer a possible suggestion for this evening as we go through a first reading. As folks know, that the policy committee has been undertaking a significant review of the entire policy book. We find ourselves in the 4,000 series, and the 4,000 series contains 14 policies with a couple of regulations, all dealing with special needs students and special education. For the past, I'd say 3 to 4 months, maybe 4 months, we've been going through all 15 of these policies, including the regulations. We've had parents, teachers, administrators, the director of special education, members of SEPTA and members of EILC provide input. It doesn't mean that it's an exhaustive list or that there isn't more input to be had, but we've been poring over these policies through that process. We wanted to send them to the board as a packet because it felt like it would be disjointed just to see 3 or 4, particularly we're talking about the entire special education section. And so if the board so feels, what I'd like to do is to move the entire special ed packet and then as a first reading, and then speak to each one briefly as we should, but not so we have to move each individual policy for that section, if that's okay by the board. For a first reading. For a second reading, I believe we should probably go through individually, if that makes sense. So one other quick thing, as you're looking on your agenda, if you see the policy number, the name of the policy, and then you see parentheses where it says R, that is a required policy, which means that we're legally mandated to have that policy. Okay. If you see L, that means it's a local policy. It's oftentimes a policy that we as a district provide for our local community much more in terms of information or local district practice. And I don't think we have any other policies in here local and required so far. Right. So that gives you some indication there. So with that being said, if the board so wishes, I want to move policy 4321 through policy 4321.14. So include all the policies within 4321, including all the additional adjustment points.
They belong together. I mean, they're happy together, and I think that's, I don't have any. I have no objections to doing it this way.
So I should make note, Judy Maxwell had a great catch on item number Q. It says policy 4321.10. That is mathematically incorrect because it would be the same as 4321.1. But we're going to let it slide for the time being, we thought, Judy, or we're going to try to get a new policy number at some point in time?
Slide because it's wrong from that point on.
Right, so there you go. So we recognize that mathematical error.
Okay, all right.
But
way to rock, Judy. Way to just throw it all out. So the numbers will change.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, where's our lawyer? Is that how they number things?
Elder, did you have?
You had a different way to do it in law school?
Well, I was just thinking anything after that. It's not screwed up either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I'm just a lawyer. UVA, we should have picked that up.
Judy Max picked it up.
So if the board, so before we vote, can I just walk ourselves through these policies real quick?
Please do.
If there's anything that came up that was major, and please, Pat and Judy, fill in when where I fail. So policy 4321, programs for students with disabilities under the IDEA in New York Education Law, Article 89, is the overarching policy which tries to provide some of the language and philosophy for the remaining policies and what we do in special education and special needs students.
Sean, I have a quick question. I'm sorry. Now that you are rolling, are these not even going to be flashed on the board tonight?
That's an excellent question. It can be flashed on the board tonight. Some of these are going to be like 9 pages long, so I'm not sure we're going to go through all 9 pages. But I should also mention that tonight is a first reading on Thursday, this Thursday, December 4th at 5 p.m. is 5:30 p.m. is another policy committee meeting. We can find that out momentarily. It's probably in the back of this, right? It does say 5 p.m. At 5 p.m. is another policy meeting, and we're in no immediate hurry to rush these. There's no design or desire to rush these through. So any policy that we need to hold on to for a couple weeks, a couple board meetings, that can happen. But there will also be a second reading where I think we'll be also going through the up on the screen as well. But in the interim, we can pull up as many as we
This is
can.
the first time in 6 years anyone has ever actually stopped me and said, "Can I get a copy of those policies that you guys are going to discuss tonight?" And I said, "Where is Pat? Where is Pat for this moment? She'd be so proud."
But to Sean's
We're all
point,
proud. All the time.
to Sean's point, 4321 has multiple pages. Just starting out has multiple pages. So not that there's anything wrong with that. These are just lengthy.
Some are short, some will be a paragraph, and some are going to be 6 pages. They vary depending on what the need is for.
If I'm not mistaken, we actually don't have access to these for public consumption.
We do. It's in the public Dropbox, which is accessible through the Board of Education page of the website.
I saw the link and went there, and it was just agendas and minutes. I didn't actually see those.
They are, I checked earlier today, they're there.
You say they're there.
I promise you.
You say they're there. That I will actually concede.
And to that point as well, other for me, that to the public as well, so if folks are reading these and find errors, mistakes, typos, etc., please feel free to email us and let us know. So 4321.1 is having a conversation about the least restrictive environment. This is also a required policy, trying to make sure that we place students in the general education program is our desire and goal. And so we begin there and work our way backwards. Is primarily what the policy says. And Sheila, I forgot you're here as well, so please, at any point in time,
Weigh in.
I got,
please.
I'm just concerned, this is a question in general about all these policies, that they're, and I think I know the answer, but just to make me feel better, I'll ask the question. These are prescribing what we will do and these are, they're putting a lot of burden on the district, but I assume that these are following requirements that we have to do anyway.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Do you think that, so with that knowledge, do you think that any of these, there's many pages if you added them all up and many things that we will do this, we will do, the district will do this and do a census and so on. Do you think that there are things in there that we've put in there at our own volition as opposed to being required to do it?
Well, I think when we were, if I can speak, Sean, in the committee, I think we looked at what was required. So we want the regulatory language in there, but with also making it very specific to Ithaca. We wanted to, we use regulatory language as a guide certainly, but with an Ithaca flavor, if you will.
I don't know what that
so it has,
is.
you know, Ithaca's imprint. So we want things in the policies to reflect what we in Ithaca believe for students with disabilities within the district's regulations.
I can give you an example.
Yeah.
One of the policies says that school districts have the opportunity to use aversive methods and means as part of their education of students with special needs. We never engage in aversive measures. So we remove that from our language.
What is that, restraints or something?
Yeah.
Or?
It could be restraints, it could be other things that, non-traditional forms of punishment, it could be loads of things. But since it's not a practice that we do, and we're mandated to talk about it, we said there's an example we're not going to do what the mandate says. Right? There's other times we went through every single policy, and most of our conversations were, okay, Sheila, okay, Matt, okay, Jason, what do we actually do? Right? Here's what the policy says. Right, but what actually takes place if I'm a parent and I walk in and I go through this? And so we had a lot of conversations about what our practice is within the guidelines. And then we had phenomenal parents come in and other folks who also said, okay, from a parent perspective, this doesn't read well to me. If I'm reading this from a teacher, it may serve my needs, but as a parent, how can we have some language that's much more affirming to students or much more begins with the idea that we're talking about general education classrooms and access first and then works our way backwards? So we had any number of those conversations. It's not to say that these policies are in any way, shape, or form perfect, and there's probably all kinds of things that we need to wrestle over. But in terms of trying to rewrite some of the things and capture our practice, I think that's what we spend our time doing.
Another example is timeout rooms. We have to have a policy in timeout rooms. The reality is we no longer have timeout rooms. We have places where kids can go to, sensory needs met, press and so on and so forth. So we had some conversations around that. What do we call it as opposed to a timeout room? So it's reflective of, the good practices in the district, but at the same time, there are things that we need to make sure that we have in the policy because it's regulation and it's protecting the district.
So if we're required to have these, but we haven't, how have we managed to not have them for so long?
Oh, we do. We've had them. This is a review.
I looked for dates down at the bottom. And
none of these, right? So that's part of the problem with the ways in which we're engaging the process, and partly why this was not always happy with us as well. That when sometimes we almost have dual policy books that are taking place. We have the current policy book, and some of these policies have not been updated since 1987 in this section. What we're giving to you now is completely revised policies because we've renumbered some policies, we've moved some things around into different places, and so that's why what we've been doing is supplanting policy book by the series. And so the 100 series is done, the 1,000 series is done, the 2,000 series is done, the 3,000 series is done. When we're done with here, then the 4,000 series will be done. But the 5,000 series is still old stuff.
Where's the old? Where are these old? What numbers are the old ones?
Probably the same, similar numbers. They won't be the exact numbers because they don't map out. And in our policy committee document, at some point, we have a document of what NYSBA proposes and what we have. And I could share that with folks. I think we used to share that at the beginning of each series, and I'd be happy to share that.
Yeah, that's right.
Elder, go ahead.
Looking at that first paragraph, it occurs to me that saying something as foundational as what we've had these conversations amongst ourselves, the special ed problems or gen ed problems first. It occurs to me that that's not boilerplate language, and that would not appear in everyone's policies about this, Jay, because they haven't had the conversations we had. That first paragraph literally sounds like us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So we're not talking about the details. I mean, there's a foundational statement that seems not artificially boosting our egos collectively, but I imagine that if we read those from most of the districts around us, that language would not be there.
You're talking about that last sentence in that first paragraph.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, and we had a significant conversation about those kinds of shifts in our thinking, right? And hopefully, not just in our thinking, but actually in our practice and our approach.
Yeah.
Right. So those are some of the conversations that we are engaged in, that very idea.
I mean, we take you guys, what is he talking? You take it for granted because we talked about it. But that's not a conversation our neighbors are having. Not that they're willing to put in writing like that.
Well, they may be.
I found all the policies on our website. They were posted at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon.
On our website, not even Dropbox. God.
Well, you go through our website and it takes you to the public Dropbox,
Right.
and it has it there. But so if they looked before 5 o'clock yesterday, they wouldn't have found it.
And we have at least 2 weeks, and if we need longer than that to go through these policies, then we take longer than that, right? We're trying to get a first reading so they're on those radars to begin the conversation about what these look like. There's no attempt to, it's the dialogue. We've been finding it very informative.
Go ahead, Jay.
The education of students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment, is that the Ithaca City School District's objective? Is that the state of New York's?
That's both the state of New York and federal government. IDEA Act and Article 89.
That language is consistent with those acts from those government bodies.
Yep.
So that's not our title for this policy. Okay. But the language within it has our flavor.
So I'm going to keep going on unless there's additional questions.
Yep.
4321.2, school-wide pre-referral approaches and interventions. So this is a policy that's discussing what our pre-referral process is in that regard. And then there's also a regulation that's attached to it, 4321.2-R. So how we're actually going to engage in the pre-referral process and interventions.
Again, Sean, this one strikes me as one that's extremely in sync with our local way of doing things and not boilerplate.
So I should say, Elder, none of these policies are boilerplate. If you know the policy committee, we spend a good deal of time of not following NISBA boilerplate. In fact, we have literally rewritten every policy that's, especially in this series, including language that matches our, not just our flavor, our approach, but also our, hopefully, philosophy to students.
I'm giving A and J.
Expect nothing less.
That's good.
Policy.
That's good. Yep.
4321.3, the allocation of space for special education programs. Pretty straightforward that we are guaranteeing that we will allocate space and make sure that space is available to the needs of children. And folks, I'm encouraging folks to go read the policy in its totality as well.
Definitely.
Policy 4321.4, independent education evaluations. And Sheila, correct me wrong, this is the ability for parents to have independent assessment of their children if they so choose?
Correct.
Yep.
This one's a local policy, not required. Just noting.
Which one? Yes.
4, 10, and 12, I think.
Yep.
And so is that,
Parents can request the independent education evaluation. We were advised some years ago by our attorneys that we definitely should have a policy. And I, in retrospect, it was very wise advice.
this is cross-referenced apparently.
Yep.
So we've had a policy like this and
cross-referencing state regs which give parents the option to have independent testing should they choose.
Yep.
And then the 4321.4-R is the regulation that's attached to this independence evaluation.
Can I ask Sheila a question?
Please.
Is it obvious, in your history, in which circumstances parents will ask for this? In other words, do they feel we are over or under classified? In which instance does this come up most?
Parents have the right to request an independent education evaluation if, for whatever reason, they disagree with our evaluation. We have conversations around that. Certainly, we don't have a lot of requests, but the requests vary. It really depends on the parent and child situation. But I think it's we have had independent education evaluations done. And our obligation is to consider that evaluations in the CSE meeting when it is complete. Now, if we think our evaluation is appropriate, we can, we can take action and say, no, we're not doing it, but we've not done it, at least the time I've been here.
4321.5, confidentiality and access to individualized education service programs and service plans. We had some conversation about who has access to students' IEPs. And you'll see that there's a new language that we had some conversation about is an IESP, an Individualized Education Service Plan, along with an IEP. It's legal language, but trying to figure the ways in which I think the policy came to us that almost anyone who was a district employee had access, and we wanted to make sure that we specified that a little more narrowly. So, in other words, if you're an employee of the district, it's fine, but you must be working with that child and specify through the IEP about who has access.
Need to know.
Need to know basis. Policy 4321.6, availability of alternate format instructional materials for students with disabilities, that we as a district will provide alternate formats, audio recordings, braille, etc., computers, whatever the case may need, for students who have been identified through their IEP and through their community and special education. Correct. Keep going.
Yep.
4321.7, district-wide and statewide assessments of students with disabilities. And I'm forgetting our conversations about this one. Sheila, can you help me out here?
It was around, as well as like the testing accommodations,
yes,
around state testing, the accommodations students can have.
That's correct. Yep. Good.
Okay.
4321.8, an impartial hearing, officer appointment and compensation. Most of our conversation on this was trying to figure out what kind of language used for compensation without putting a number down. And so, because we knew that number would change every year, or so the policy states that the fee schedule will be housed in the Office of Special Education. And that's what that policy states.
I got a quick, does this happen often? How many times a year?
Impartial hearing?
Yeah.
It's not a yearly thing, but certainly, yes. Again, it's the parent's right to file an impartial hearing.
How many do we do? How many do we do in a year?
In a year? It's hard to say, maybe one, but
oh, okay.
how do you say that? It's not. It can start with a complaint that may go to an impartial hearing. We have, in my, since I've been here for 10 years, I think we've had 2 situations where it's become a full-blown hearing. All other situations we've been able to resolve.
Okay.
Yeah, we're required to do a resolution meeting before going to partial hearing. Usually that's where it gets.
Okay.
We really do try to make.
You have to have the framework in place in case indeed you do. You have to have the framework in place through policies, et cetera, in case you do.
Certainly governed. The whole procedure is governed by a lot of regulations that we have to follow. So.
Exactly.
4321.9, declassification of students with disabilities. This is our declassification policy. I'm not sure we had a policy before. We definitely had a process, but I'll have to go back and take a look at my notes to see if there was. It is required.
Sean, you guys summarize for those who haven't had the privilege of spending time with you in policy. What is the basic point of this? What is our general philosophy on declassification as a district?
I'm not really sure what you're asking, Elders. Certainly, we review students. We're required to review students on an annual basis. Frequently, we do it more often than that. And, if students qualify for continuation of services, we do have a reevaluation every 3 years. We are obligated to look at their continued eligibility, and my hope is that students will successfully access the curriculum with supports. If they reach a point where they don't need that level of support, then we look at declassification.
I guess, Sheila, where I'm coming from is the last time we had the privilege of discussing this with data, you may recall, it just appeared on the statistics that declassification it just wasn't occurring. It almost felt like it actually wasn't happening.
I think, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Albert, but but I would, if we were to look at the numbers, and I can certainly pull that together for you, we would probably see there have been more students that have been declassified than in the past. So we want students to, we want to support students certainly, but we want to, also provide students. If students are eligible for declassification, we want to declassify
And this policy continues to provide services up to a year to help with that transition of declassification.
Connor, then Jay.
A few policies ago, you'd mentioned the need-to-know basis for IEP plans. Do a similar policy proposed exists for 504 plan?
We follow pretty parallel process to 504, although 504 is not, it's civil rights. It comes out of civil rights legislation. There are far fewer regulations, much broader, much bigger language, but in terms of the actual process, in terms of reviewing on an annual basis and so forth, developing a plan, having access to the plan, we follow a similar process to IEPs.
And Jay.
So following up with the concern that Eldred mentioned just before about the declassification. So in here, the policy, I have no problem with that. But to the point about are we trying, or do we have a formalized process? Do we endeavor to declassify children? Do we have a structured effort? And you said something, and I hope I didn't understand that, or I hope I misunderstood it. You said, well, every 3 years we review.
We review, yeah.
That doesn't sound good.
Clarify. We have to have a reevaluation every 3 years per the regulations. And that's when perhaps there's more intensive testing of a student. But we review the IEP on an annual basis, often more than once a year, depending on requests for review and so forth. We always have to ask the eligibility question at every meeting. At least we should be asking that. And certainly the CSE chairs have been instructed to do that. We have to always ask ourselves, ask the committee. The committee has to ask, does this child continue to be eligible? But there's a formal process. You have to do that every 3 years. With, as I said, it could be with more intensive testing to see if the student still qualifies for that particular classification. We might find that a child that started with a speech language impairment no longer really qualifies. Maybe it's looking more like a learning disability. That's the sort of conversation we would have at reevaluation meetings, but not we could have on a yearly basis too.
Well, so unfortunately I'm naive about special ed, so this question may sound naive. When an IEP is initially drawn up, is it have as a plan to get the child, what percent, I suppose there are times that the plan isn't even drawn up to get them all. You're drawing up a plan to bring services to address a need that's been identified, I assume.
Right.
And so it isn't, the plan isn't to get them off the IEP. It's to address the need that's been identified.
Special education, special design instruction. So there's a process. We make a determination whether the student, is eligible for a particular classification. And then if so, what does that student need in order to access the curriculum above and beyond what they can receive in general education? Our hope is that we provide, through differentiated, curriculum and so forth, all this, as more supports than not within general education. But there are students that need special design instruction, something more than that. And that's the question. That's what we have to talk about in committee. What does that? What other services beyond what they're receiving in general education do they need in order to access the curriculum successfully?
But if one's coming from that idea to bring services because anyway, the way you did a great job of describing it, that doesn't in any way seem to have a goal of getting them off those services.
If I can, I'm not sure the goal for all students is declassification.
Right.
Right. So for some students,
right.
And so that's the thing that we're trying to balance as well, right? Some students, we know that they're going to need services their entire educational career to be as successful as we want them to be.
Agreed.
And so then we're trying to write IEPs to make sure we facilitate that. For other students, we may feel like there may be a little bit, shorter term need, so to speak, that for lack of a better word, it almost may be remediation, right? That if we provide some services, then maybe they'll find themselves to be successful and we may not need the services anymore. So I think we have sometimes not competing interests. There go different ways for different students. So yeah, sometimes it's explicit. We're trying to get folks to declassify. Sometimes no. We know that with some young folks, that this is what they're going to need to be successful.
And
does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And you're saying annual. It's given a good look at least annually.
Yes, we're required to do that with many of our students. We have, more frequent meetings. A parent can always, request a review, and we're obligated to have that meeting. So, but it has to be at least annual because the IEP is 1 year old adopted. You have to look at that IEP. One would hope that students, that we're collecting data, we're monitoring students' progress, and that students are being successful as a result of the supports that we're providing. And that's, that's the purpose. We want to see if they're, they're working toward the annual goals that we have recommended.
Right, you would hope. Go ahead.
I think I was naive.
Lots of that going around.
A long time ago, thinking that the whole purpose of special ed was to provide a scaffold to a child. In the same way that a scaffold is there to fix physical structures, and you never expect to see that scaffold 10 years later, right? You just expect that it's there, so you can do what you have to do for the child, and then those go away. I didn't realize then what I realize now, that some kids need it for the duration. Sometimes there's a very odd tug of war between teachers and parents and our system about which kids need it, which kids don't. And that's the part that I'm trying to learn more about so I can become more useful. Right? Sometimes I've heard from teachers, they wish a child had continued. Sometimes I've heard from teachers, they want that child off of it so a child can learn to spread their own wings. And those interactions are the reason we pay Sheila the massive bucks. But it's complicated. It's complicated. But I really did come into this thinking that they're supposed to go away. That's our entire goal with every child, to make them disappear. And I realize I'm wrong.
Well, if not disappear, I think we would hope that the plans are evolving, obviously. They're not static. They're not a plan that were prescribed at a point in time and then reviewed 3 or 4 or 5 years later. Jay, right? Right. Are the correct resources being brought to bear? Different resources? How would the child react during that year? And I think it's an evolving plan over time.
Absolutely.
And rationing down, if possible, those services that they need as they grow a little older. Just one question. Just looking second paragraph, and then item 1, item 2. Graduated with a regular high school or Regents diploma. Regular high school diploma. What?
Kill that word.
So I was just there's.
I was in local.
Right. We don't really. So. I would just a point that was. I just happened to see that. Anything else on this?
4321.10. Leave the mathematics alone. Programs, services for parentally placed non-public school students with disabilities. This is a policy that outlines that students who may not be attending ICSD schools but are in ICSD, we are still mandated to provide services for. And so not only that, but also fines students. According to the law, we have to fine these young folks as well.
I think we spent a long time on this.
We did spend a long time on this one with child fines. So that's what this policy states. Policy 4321.11, public report on revisions to district policies, practices, and procedures upon finding significant disproportionality. This is actually a required policy, but it also outlines what should take place should we find disproportionality, including some public disclosure.
Does this give you guys an opportunity to actually look at data in your meetings, or you're not even dealing with that?
At this point in time, we just wrote the policy. I think the expectation is, I should also mention we've had Danielle, who's been an incredible help to us at policy committee meetings. making an ongoing list of every time it says something like the superintendent must do this, superintendent will do that. And so this is one of these things that sort of we should be looking at every now and then to see if there is disproportionality. According to the policy and according to the state mandate, we should be looking to see if we have disproportionality in special education.
And we did this, we did look.
You're right, we did. 2 years ago, we looked at our data in terms of ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and gender.
You mean here?
Yes.
Oh, I remember that very well. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Oh, and in policy committee meeting as well. 4321.12, use of behavioral interventions, including timeout rooms, physical restraints, and aversive interventions. That's what we're talking about. So here's an example where Ed was saying where I was ignorant, where my personal pedagogy is that timeout rooms shouldn't take place. And then hearing from a number of folks saying that how that's actually valuable for some young folks as well, including teachers and parents. So there's an example. We had a good, robust conversation about the use of pedagogical spaces like that and what they are good for.
And they're really multi-purpose rooms. They're not really the traditional timeout rooms with the door and all that business. It's it could be just a place for kids to, calm down, or it might be a place for kids to rev up, depending on their needs. So it's and really we only have one such room in the district now.
4321.13, preschool special education. We had Lily Talcott come to speak to us as well and help us with this policy to figure out how to write a policy that addresses preschool special education. And also have a conversation about how we engage in this cautiously and sparingly, given the age of young folks, but also know that for some young folks, it's an absolute necessity for them to be successful. Policy 4321.14, special education personnel. We did have a robust conversation about this as well, in particular about the role of training and professional development in the district and how we're going to be utilizing that, and as well as who we hire and how we recruit teachers who are well trained in multiple instructions, multiple intelligences, and who have who are highly trained in special needs students as well.
So that would mean a focus on recruitment.
That was partly it's in this policy.
Look at that.
Do you think we have anything like this now?
No, this one I don't. We do have something that says that we want highly trained and highly qualified personnel, but it was
nothing this detailed.
No.
This is pretty detailed. Do you think that there's any danger of someone using this against us and saying, you hired this person, but I'm better qualified by your own guidelines?
That's a question I don't think we've even considered, Jay. We could talk about it much more on Thursday. About we have had conversations about how any of these policies get used by teachers, by administrators, by parents, by students, by community members, and try to have some conversation about the language and what are we really trying to say. That policy reads like this, the way in which you said that. Is that really what we're trying to say? We've had those conversations. But in terms of someone coming to use this against us about we're hiring,
why they didn't get hired?
We can take a look into that.
Well, yeah. I mean, number 3 says you're seeking a candidate who's duly certified.
To the extent possible.
But if you turn down somebody who's duly certified to take someone who's not, I'm just reading the policy.
Yeah.
And we don't have, by not having a written policy right now, we haven't. You might have these goals, and I don't know. Once you write them down, unfortunately, it becomes a possibility to be used against you.
It's part of the conversation. Now, I should say this is also one, a policy recommended by NYSBA and required. And so the exact language we can play around with, right, which we've been doing, and we'll send it off to BS&K and probably back to NYSBA for approval as well. But those bullet points are probably, I don't remember changing that exact language at all.
I don't either.
I was thinking of suggesting that we get the boilerplate and check on the direct requirements, talk about it on Thursday, and then kick it to Human Resources.
I like the idea.
Wow.
Tit for tat.
To that point, Jay.
That's government in action. If I, that's great.
My other committee.
Appreciate that.
About their age, just put it right in front of yourself.
The federal government in microcosm. There you go, Connor. Just boot it off to somebody else.
If we have a more robust HR presence I'm not too concerned about our ability to manage this policy and many others.
Well, here's an example of the conversation we had was bullet point number 5, right? To provide appropriate ongoing training for personal development to CSE and CPSE members. Like that's a change of policy with budgetary implications, and right. So these are not one. We're mandated to be doing that, so we should be trying to figure out how we're going to address it. But it does come with some changes to practice and procedure. There's no question about it. So those are the policies within the 4321 series of special needs, special education students. The way in which we've been going about this is we move things for a first reading. We vote on a first reading to have them come back on a second reading. So we'll have to vote. I'd like to vote on these, and then what we'll do to spare us some time is to send them back to us in halves. So we'll do half the policy one meeting and then the other half next meeting, because we'll have to go through them a little more thoroughly to make sure that, because once we adopt it for a second reading, they become board policy immediately.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Exactly. They were moved and seconded, correct?
Yep.
Discussed, reviewed. Eldred has a question.
One more question for Sean and his posse. From your perspective, which is the biggest shift in all the policies that you just read through in your conversations? Which was, where did we land that was furthest from where we started in this?
One of those elder questions. That,
Yeah.
You
I think that a different onus, more being careful and looking over and respecting the rights of parents and some of them, and the needs of children. That we have to be more out there. That's a good question.
I would think it goes back to that original paragraph, that Eldred, to the original paragraph of that first policy. I think that probably is really the focus. Right.
Yeah, I think Judy captured it beautifully. I think it's been a shift to be much more about what young folks need to be successful, and that was, and I can tell you the personal shift for me was to learn much more about our special education program between what we have on paper and what we do in practice. And then to hear stories about the translation or sometimes the mistranslation, and say, okay, then where can we sort of fill these gaps? And so the work that Sheila did, was pretty impressive to not just go through these, but then to also be open to conversation and dialogue, right? Well, do we really want to do that? Maybe we shouldn't be doing that anymore, right? Or I hear from parents that this doesn't work. How are we addressing that? Right? Those kinds of questions took place. Pat, do you want to add
anything else?
I'm looking down at this point. Thank you.
I would just like to thank and SEPTA for their contributions. It was pretty intensive research and thinking that you and Ruth and others did. So.
And very valuable. I know you kept saying, no apologies. It was very valuable. And I also want to go on record of thanking members of EILC who emailed me throughout the process as well. So there's been a number of people who've been putting some input. So it's been very beneficial.
Great. Thank you. Who seconded? Anything else? Do you want to speak?
Respond to that. I just want to reiterate what I've already told the committee is that I was very impressed with the process they went through, and we really appreciate that we were able to sit down and go through line by line, and the conversations that we had were very enlightening all the way around, and I just want to commend the committee for the work they've done. They did all the hard work, and we just came in at the end and made some suggestions. But,
you sound like a board member, so that's what we do. So, and we as well appreciate the work of the policy committee, and we'll continue with that work as soon as we vote on this group. All in favor of the first reading and to come back at a later date? Thank you. That's everyone. So, Sean, a few more.
Yep, and these may be easier. We don't know, though. We'd like to get caught up on periods and ands and does someplace. We had a conversation of a need to have a policy around animals in schools. And so we spent some time trying to draft a single policy and realized that a single policy was not going to do what we needed to do. So we decided to break up the policy into 3 different policies, 2 of which you see here. Okay. So by that I mean there's a policy on dissection of animals, There's a policy on animals in the classroom, for example, classroom pets or animals that come in for demonstrations. And there's a third policy coming about service animals in the buildings because we have students who are in need and use of service animals. So only 2 of these 3 policies are present today. The first one is about dissection. We did work with Carlin Gray and Matt to help draft this policy to, one, give some sort of overview of why we engage in dissection, how we want to be respectful of life, and the opportunity for, obviously, for parents to opt out. And so there's our dissection policy for our first reading. So I move policy 4850, dissection of animals, for a first reading.
Second. Second by Chris. We still cut little animals up. That's so old school. That's great.
It is very
bio.
old school.
That's great.
So
it still is done, Connor, right? I mean, they're still doing bio. What do we do? Are we still doing frogs? Or what are we doing?
I think a fetal pig at the honors level,
Okay.
frogs at the regents level, and maybe some more intense stuff at the AP level.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess
It must be pretty tame.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to see other animals?
No.
College of Veterinary Medicine right in town.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Pat, do you have anything to say about this?
I'm going to say that when this came up in committee, I argued very strongly for an anti-vivisection clause, which means that we would strictly prohibit the cutting into of live animals, because I don't see how anybody could possibly argue against it. But there was not sufficient interest on the part of the rest of the committee.
It took me a minute to look at my dictionary and understand what vivisection was. And once I got through that, Pat, then we had a real conversation.
Do they still do that in biology?
Vivisection?
No, I doubt it.
Where they pit the frog and
The fetal pigs are not
no, but
alive.
the frog
Come in a
is.
jar, don't they?
No.
So
We don't.
Okay.
I was going to ask if you had heard anything about vivisection.
No, it was a nod to history because the anti-vivisection movement was really huge in the 1890s.
Wasn't there a league? Wasn't there
An anti-vivisection league.
There was one. There was a league, right?
And I'm going to
I'm not
add
sure. I'm not sure who won the championship, but there was a league.
We are in policy committee right now. This is what policy committee is.
This is what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 1850s.
I'm going to say that up on the hill at Insectapalooza, I've personally witnessed the vivisection of a cockroach, and I'm not going to be judgmental. I don't want to see it happening here. I don't assume that it ever will.
Do cockroaches make it to animal level? I mean,
They're well, yeah. I mean, we're protecting dissected worms in this policy, and I would say the cockroach is more complex than the worm.
okay then. Well, it's always interesting when we do the policy.
But I will not, since the bill has made it, or the policy has made it this far, I will not hold out for the.
You were not going to stand in the way.
It's only a first reading. Let's see what happens.
I will let the minutes reflect my observation, and that will be my little historical voice.
Move seconded. It is just a first reading, and we can obviously do this all over again later at a second reading. But all in favor? No other questions. It's very good.
And then lastly, for the evening, I'm going to move both of these policies, policies 4850.1, animals in classrooms, and policy 4850.1, R, animal and classroom regulations, for a first reading.
And it's short.
Can I ask a second?
Second.
Sorry.
It's a tie.
And what we try to do is be clear here that we understand the importance and value of having classroom animals or classroom pets or animals in for demonstrations. We also want to be safe and make sure that we are taking the health precautions that are necessary in terms of allergies, in terms of animal protection, etc. And so the regulation is a little bit more robust than the actual policy. And it does indicate, which is a new change in our practice at this point in time, anyway, that I understand, is that any animal in the classroom must go through the principal first, be it for demonstration or a classroom pet.
Okay. I think
it's been a matter of sort of building practice, but not policy.
Right. I would think that would be under the purview of the principal. Connor, Jeff?
So what would happen if a student was allergic to a classroom?
The animal would go immediately.
Cannot.
There's no questions
We
asked.
can't
get rid of the student?
No little furry animals, things like that.
Yep.
And you're going to work on service animals next.
And service animals will be coming next.
Yep.
Right, Matt? We're doing service animals next?
Yep.
Anything else moved, seconded by Pat and Brad. Anything else? All in favor for the first reading? That's everyone. And
thank you for your patience. We'll have half of these back to you at our next board meeting. For
wow.
a second reading and adoption.
Well, it's a tremendous job. We appreciate it. And there are more policies as relates to students in this section, correct?
A couple more in the 4,000 series, but the 5,000 series is the largest of the series, so we'll have fun.
Right. Good. So we'll be looking for input from our student reps when to get to that point. If not, obviously we're already having input now, but we'll look forward to that. Other business, anything jumping out? Again, our meeting we're earlier in the month because there's holidays at the end of the month, so we'll be meeting, when is it, Dr. Brown?
16th.
16th. 2 weeks from tonight.
There it is, the 16th. Holiday party meeting.
Can't wait to see Judy Dearman.
So we will be meeting again on the 16th in public. There's various committee meetings, various events. When does basketball start?
Friday night.
Friday night?
Is it Friday? I thought there was a game going down there.
Don't know.
I think
boys hockey starts. Started.
They won a tournament.
Yeah. They won.
Yeah.
So, all right. Winter sports, I should say, in broad terms. Winter sports have started. Lots of things going on. Anything else we need to do tonight?
Move we adjourn.
Thank you, Brad. Without seconded and without objection.
Oh, fantastic.
Great job, Sean.
Good job.